Hi everybody, so I'm Tony Noty. I'm the Chair of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at UBC. Welcome back everybody. I hope you had a nice lunch and eager to join in this panel discussion. So we have a very distinguished panel of experts in ASD, and what I've asked each of the panel members to do is to explain why they're here today, and then to pick up on one of the themes that Jonathan described this morning and relate it to their practice, one that they think is really important that you take away with you, as well as something that either Jonathan didn't have time to cover or didn't have such prominence, but in that person's experience is also something you need to take away with you. And then we're going to throw it open for questions, either to panel members or, of course, to Jonathan as well.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Dr. Rashmi Nirmal, and I'm a psychologist at BC Children's Hospital, and I do some work at the University of British Columbia as well. Thank you, Dr. Weiss, for your very fruitful talk this morning. Several things stood out for me, but in particular, I recently conducted a study looking at the lived experiences of young adults with Asperger's syndrome or high-functioning autism attending college and university. And several themes, about 8 themes, came up from that research, but one in particular is quite in line with thriving in positive outcomes, and that is having a sense of appreciation. Many of the research participants said that attending post-secondary education they appreciated the academic nature of it in terms of it being intellectually stimulating, critically inclined, engaging, having flexibility in course selection, being respected by professors and respecting their professors, and then also a social appreciation, so being around like-minded students, being in more of a socially mature environment, and also seeing a decrease in bullying, which made them more comfortable in interacting with others. So in terms of looking at thriving in positive outcomes, we're seeing this into adulthood as well. Now, what I want to stress and emphasize in keeping with your findings of several of your research studies, Dr. Weiss, was my study included a subgroup of individuals with ASD who made that transition to post-secondary education. And unfortunately, the data is showing that although students with HFA or Asperger's want to attend college or university, that transition is very difficult for them. So in terms of your components of thriving and building individual strengths, what I think is so important and what I want to emphasize is building those self-regulation skills, building self-advocacy skills, and building adaptive behavior skills. And timing is critical, and the earlier we can do that in elementary school and secondary school is so vital so these students can effectively make that transition to post-secondary education. Some of the challenges that my participants experienced in post-secondary education was managing the academic expectations. Understanding autism spectrum disorder, how it affects them and other people's understanding of it, managing the transition to a new educational system, selecting courses, understanding housing, disability documentation. I can go on, but you get the point. And then also entering a new social world. So again, I just want to emphasize and stress how important it is to build those skills in high school, having them clearly documented on IEPs, and working with the family and the school team to effectively transition our students to post-secondary education or community placements, whatever the goal may be. Thank you.
Hello. So my name is Stephanie, and I'm the Director of Programming at the Canucks Autism Network. Can I start by asking, how many people in the room today are parents of someone with ASD? Okay, lots. And how many are professionals who work with individuals with ASD? And how many of you either are the parent of or work with school-aged individuals with ASD? By that I mean like 6 to 18. Yeah, and how many are working with individuals who are older than 18? Very helpful, thank you. Thank you for humoring me. Okay, so I want to just start, if I can, by talking a little bit about Canucks Autism Network and what we do there and how I see it fitting with many of the themes that Jonathan talked about today. So Canucks Autism Network, it's a nonprofit organization based here in Vancouver. We're in our 8th year now. And we were founded by Paulo Aquilini, who's one of the owners of the Canucks, who has a son with autism, who is now 21 years old. So the Aquilini family's passion has always been to provide individuals with autism and their families access to all the activities that really enhance quality of life, but are often very difficult to access in the community for a range of reasons. So at Canucks Autism Network, we provide a really wide range of sports programs for kids as young as 4, all the way up through adulthood. We run social groups, we have family events, we have family camps, we have camps for kids in the summer, we have a school-based awareness program. So we run quite a wide range of things. So for those of you here in the room today, I think an important message is that also accessing these programs is virtually free for families. So you sign up for an annual membership, it's $25 a year, you can have that refunded with your provincial autism funding, and then you have access to programs. So for school-age kids, that's swimming, soccer, basketball, skating, hockey, gymnastics, I know I'm gonna miss a whole bunch, physical literacy. For teens, we have yoga, we have an outdoor recreation program, we have sports programs that go up for older individuals, like our hockey program and our swim program. We also are starting to enter some employment-related programming. So we have a really exciting new program that Deborah has helped us a lot to promote, and you'll see it in the upcoming ACT newsletter, called Community Works. And it might be of particular interest to some people in the room today. So it's a federally funded program where we take youth with ASD, so 16 and up, and they go into the community with typically developing peers, and they are volunteering at a range of different nonprofits around Vancouver. And it's a clinical program, which is different than the rest of the programming we run. So there's individual goals set around socialization, around work readiness skills, and we're really quite excited to be able to offer that program. So for more information about any of that, you can have a look at our website, which is just canucksautism.ca. There's also information outside that you can pick up today, or you can come and find me. So that's a little spiel on CAN. Oh, and the one other misconception I think a lot of people have about us is that we cater well to a particular group of people on the spectrum. So I'd like to just take a minute and comment on that. I hear from parents that, my son needs a lot of support. I'm really not sure that he could ever attend a hockey program, for example. All of our sports programs for kids are staffed one-to-one by trained staff. So they're all getting specific training in autism, and they're supervised by a team of staff who go out and make sure they're doing the right things. And we're a very collaborative group as well, so we really welcome parent input. We can do 2-to-1 staffing where it's necessary for kids, so please bring your kids if that's your concern. The other concern I sometimes hear is, I'm a parent of an 18-year-old who has Asperger's. He's very aware when he's placed in groups with kids who are, not of the same level that he is. So I'm worried that if he comes to your programs, he's not gonna like them. Inevitably, we always have the wide range of autism spectrum registered in our programs. So if you're signing up for, say, our teen social club, I can pretty much guarantee you there will be others there that he can relate well to, he or she can relate well to. And the other thing about our staff is their average age is about 21. So they become essentially like peer mentors, and we attract, unlike anywhere else I've ever been related to autism, we attract a lot of guys too, which is a pretty fun and exciting thing. So that's all I'll say about Ken. Thank you, Jonathan, for a great talk. I really appreciated the topic of our talk today, thriving with individuals with ASD. That's always been my focus and my orientation when looking at autism, and I think it's our orientation as an organization as well. I thought it was really interesting looking at the top 5 needs prioritized by caregivers coming out of that CASDA survey, and if you look at school-aged kids, social skills, activity-based, rec, leisure, summer camps are 1 to 4. So none of those things are, they're all recreation, they're all what I would call quality of life type interventions. If you look at what was identified by adult age, or caregivers of adult age individuals with ASD, social skills and rec, leisure are 2 and 5 in the top 5. So really highly prioritized by caregivers. What I think is kind of interesting is that recreation and leisure and activity-based programming don't even make it to the top 13 when you ask professionals what they think is important. Not to harp on professionals, because I'm a BCBA myself, that's my background. I used to work as a private behavior consultant, but I think that sometimes we really, really overlook the value of getting our kids into recreation and activity early. You know, I often say in my talks, if you talk to a typically developing child who's 7 or 8 or 12 or 14, tell me about you. The first thing they almost always say is, you know, I'm a hockey player, or I dance, or I love art. And that's the quality of life stuff that you get when you get your kids into recreation early on. And I think that there's a little bit of a misconception that, you know, first we need to build the skills and then we can put the kids into the activities. Then they'll be ready, quote unquote, to do the activities. My experience is that, in fact, by going into the activities, kids are building so many of the things that Jonathan talked about. They're building a sense of competence. You know, I didn't think I could skate, but then I learned to skate. I didn't think I could swim, and now I'm swimming, and all these people are here cheering for me, and I'm really feeling a sense of accomplishment. They're certainly building confidence. They're certainly building connectedness. Some of our kids, I think they form really special relationships in our programs with other kids that they meet there. And one further comment about that is, I don't think it's just the kids who need those C words. I think it's the parents as well. So when parents attend recreation programs and they see their kids learning to swim, and they didn't think that was possible, now the parents have a greater sense of confidence about what's possible for their kids. The parents, the sense of competence, perceived competence of their children also goes up. So those C words were my favorite part of your talk, because they really, really resonated with the types of things that I see in the recreation programming that we provide. You know, your connection between community participation and how important that is to thriving. And just remembering that thought of like, yeah, I guess really when you do talk to kids, that's the first thing they mention usually. It's really part of their sense of identity and who they are. And we want to give our kids with autism those same opportunities to really figure out those pieces of who they are. What do they like to do? Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is positive families, recreation, I think, and particularly really well-supported recreational opportunities definitely contributed to positive families as well. So coming to a place where you can connect with other families who are often managing the same types of challenges, get that sort of informal social support, really valuable opportunity as well. So that's all I have to say.
Hi everyone. So I am Patrick, and I'm actually on the autism spectrum. And as well as that, I'm a UVic student. That's sort of what I do on an everyday basis. But I came over here for the panel, obviously. So as someone with autism, I'd just like to start by thanking you for your talk and for that more positive way of looking at the spectrum and the focus on thriving, because in my own experience, that's actually really important and much more successful. When I was in middle school, which was when I was first diagnosed as being on the spectrum, people were taking a very behavior-focused thing, because I had like problem behaviors. So focusing on those behaviors, on those symptoms, was actually increasing the stress that I was under. And I was already under a huge amount of stress with sensory sensitivities and pure things. And it was all just compounding and creating, you know, a negative sort of cycle and building. I was able to get out of that environment, though, into a distance education program called SIDES that's on Vancouver Island there. And a really awesome program, and the way they look at things is just sort of positive. That's their mindset. They think about those things even if they're not using the same language. And that worked really brilliantly. And my grades shot up, and I got into UVic, and I'm like a healthy, well-functioning person, more or less, I hope. Yeah. Another thing that jumped out is contributing to the community, one of your, or the 6 C's that you were citing. I found that really rewarding myself. I'm serving on 2 nonprofit boards, and I didn't found, but I have sort of taken over the facilitation of meetings of a peer support group for people with autism that we have in Victoria. That was founded by somebody else on the autism spectrum and has been run by people on the spectrum throughout. And apart from providing peer support, we also have a journal that we publish, a peer-reviewed one through UVic, in fact, and we have an annual conference that we organize. And I found that something that, it gives me social contacts and connectedness, a feeling of contributing to the community, and I think the same is true for many of the other people that are involved in that. So I think that self-selected things that people are interested in that you can do in the community, it's really, really helpful, not only in terms of quality of life in the short term, but also in terms of building up a resume to get employment. So really highly recommend that sort of thing. Very important, I think. And my last point is kind of a more, bit of anecdotal, but I think it's kind of interesting. It was the bear, the mascot, that reminded me of it. Because I found myself, I do drama as a hobby, and it allows you to explore a role but not have it reflect on yourself. It's sort of a dissociation between yourself and the role that allows you to be more comfortable in that and to explore things that otherwise you might be too anxious to do. And I think that the same principle might have been at work with the mascot. And I think that's maybe a more useful, broader lesson that we could maybe apply to some of the things that we do to make them safer and allow people to explore things that otherwise they might not. Just a thought, but maybe worth thinking about, I hope. Hey.
Truly, I get to be sandwiched between the two experts. My name is David Warling. I'm a psychologist here in Vancouver, and I have a clinic called the West Coast Child Development Group. I've also been doing Sunny Hill assessments for ASD for quite some time. I understand I have about 236 seconds left, so I'll be very clear if I can. And I wanted to hit on 2 points that Jonathan had made that I think are very important for clinicians like myself, but for the rest of us that are living and working in and around autism spectrum. The first is just this fantastic switch, and it really is a switch, from pathology to observing strength. And it sounds like a simple sort of semantic Jedi mind trick to move away from pathology to strength, but it means quite a bit, and I certainly see that in my own work. It's almost as if we need a rebranding or a reframing of autism. You can see it in the popular culture. We know the Sheldons of the world seem to be promoting their own version of it. The specialist Sternay folks are capturing a certain market of that. You're going to cut into my time, you know that.
I just wanted to say, Sheldon Cooper is the reason my son got diagnosed with autism.
There we go. So popular media helps. Having said that, it's the idea of reframing or rebranding autism is important in a number of ways, and I'd like to use a sort of a clinical demonstration for that. I had a young man in high school who was referred to me for suicidal ideation. In fact, it wasn't just ideation, it was intent. He was about 14, but he had made it very clear he was intending on killing himself. When we met, his logic was such, and let me run it through you very quickly, is that he had decided that as a video game fan, I'm not going to use the word addict because we know these are strong interests. As a video game fan, he was playing a certain game. He was very good at it. He had aspirations of being a professional. He had researched somewhere in the literature that by the age of 30, one's manual dexterity starts to degrade to the point where you are no longer likely to be a professional gamer. So he decided at the age of 30 he would take his life. Very rational, very straightforward. Until we got to that point, though, it was seen as a mental health crisis, it was pathology, and it was a serious crisis. Once we moved through it, though, we were able to reframe that and say, okay, you're only 14 or 15 now, that gives you 15 years to solve the problem. What could you do? And just watching the light switch and his brain activate saying, yeah, I could do this, I got 15 years. I said, yeah, continue going to school, work hard, see if you can solve the problem. And it was an instant reframe, and we were no longer talking about immediate or suicide. We were talking about getting back to school, getting functioning, and connecting to his peers. The second thing I'd like to sort of draw attention to is that at the moment, myself included, mental health clinicians are very good at pathologizing. We spend a lot of time measuring and get sort of accurately Likert scale about how far off the norm people are. So this approach to me is very exciting in a number of ways, but I would also challenge the community, Jonathan and other researchers and myself, to think maybe we need to start not only just thinking about how do we compare individuals on the spectrum to the typicals, but how do we compare them to themselves? Start getting some inter-rater comparisons, because we all know the spectrum is just that, a spectrum, and the variation is massive. So one person's functioning may be very different or thriving from another. So I really look forward to this sort of future wave of research to see where it goes and how we can compare individuals not only against the norm, but sort of within their own sort of areas of specialty. Thank you.
So thank you to all the panelists. That was a wonderfully diverse range of areas of special interest for each person. So what we're going to do is throw this up to the audience, and you can ask anybody, including Jonathan,